Thank you, sir. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Indira Gandhi National Open University, Professor Nageshwar Rao, sir, Pro Vice Chancellors of IGNOU, Professor R. V. Das, sir, Professor Satyakam, sir, Professor Uma Kanjilal, ma'am, Professor Sumitra Kukreti, ma'am, our chief guest of today's webinar, Professor Ramesh Chand Sinha, sir, Chairperson, Indian Council of Philosophical Research, keynote speaker of today's webinar, Professor Sir Richard Sorabji, Honorary Fellow, Wolfson College, Oxford, Directors of School, Regional Directors, Registrars, Heads of Divisions, colleagues, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskar. It is indeed a great pleasure and honor for me to extend a very warm and hearty welcome to you all for the national webinar on affiliation in the times of pandemic. We are very much honored by the gracious presence of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nageshwar Rao, sir, and express our heartfelt gratitude to you, sir, for your invaluable insights, unwavering support, and invaluable guidance for all the endeavors of SOITS, sir. It is your exceptional vision, sir, exemplary leadership and insight, which have paved the way for IGNOU to reach new heights nationally as well as internationally. With great pleasure, I extend a very warm and hearty welcome to our honored and esteemed chief guest, Professor Ramesh Chand Sinha, sir, who is Chairperson, Indian Council of Philosophical Research, and our keynote speaker, Professor Sir Richard Sorabji, who is Honorary Fellow, Wolfson College, Oxford. And sir, I sincerely thank you for gracing this occasion and sharing your knowledge and word of wisdom with us, sir. Philosophy deals with fundamental questions about life. World Philosophy Day celebrates the importance of philosophical reflection and encourages people all over the globe to share their philosophical heritage with each other. Tragedies, it is often said, are great leveler. True to the same, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought back into the focus of some core ideas central to the philosophy. These all ideas are perennially relevant to all walks of life. This pandemic has thrown a new light on all aspects of life, which includes from either perspectives in teaching, studying, and practicing philosophy. Now, people have a different approach of life from a philosophical perspective with having fresh insight. It has taught us to relieve timeless principle and enrich human being with the values of compassion and universal brotherhood. It is a time for humanism to make a triumphant comeback in their new avatar to make the world a better place. It is a time to accept and respect silence, to see everything with awareness and awe, with gratitude and compassion, to raise our mind above everything with patience, compassion, humanity, and develop a broad approach to life and awareness and consciousness to connect mentally with humanity. The entire humanity, this COVID pandemic has shown us that we should come together and address these issues in a holistic manner. These issues need to be addressed together, whether it is on the perspective of science by developing vaccine or delivering other things, or on the basis of economic as far as livelihood concerned, whether it is in terms of psychology for providing them consolation, etc. This has to be all perspective of life. And the role of philosophy in such time cannot be doubted. Philosophy has opened the door for a new concept. So philosophy is an important subject and it is discussed across the world now. IGNOU, being one of the premier university of the higher education, endeavors to promote the study at all levels, including masters in philosophy. Under the guidance of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, we have launched a BA General in Philosophy under choice-based credit system and also a MOOC course on ethics from January session on Swayam platform. And also under his guidance, by celebrating this World Philosophy Day, we underline the enduring value of philosophy for the development of human thought, for each culture and for each individual, and emphasize the importance of philosophy as a discipline that encourages critical and independent thinking. With these words, once again, on behalf of School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, and on my personal behalf, I welcome you all for this webinar and sincerely thank you for your gracious presence, please. Now, with great pleasure, I invite our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Sumitra Kukreti ma'am, to please deliver the opening remark. Professor Sumitra Kukreti ma'am.
Was it I who was being called on? But it was.
Thank you, Professor Shah. Vice Chancellor.
Is it my turn or not?
Professor Nageshwar Raoji, my fellow Pro Vice Chancellor. Chief guest of this webinar, Professor Rameshchan Sinha. The keynote speaker, Professor Sir Richard Sorabji. Director SOITS, Professor Shachi Shah. Professor Nandini Sinha Kapoor, and other faculty members of SOITS. Namaskar to all. As we all know that this webinar is being organized to commemorate World Philosophy Day. Actually, World Philosophy Day encourages academic exchange and highlights the contribution of philosophical knowledge in addressing global issues. Thinking about pandemic. We can think of the pandemic because we are alive. I think, therefore, I am. Being alive, we suffer the pandemic that threatens our existence. The question of existence is a philosophical question. Yes, indeed. Since December 2019, the greatest threat the world is facing is the pandemic or COVID-19. Despite modern advances in medicine, COVID-19 has caused more than 1 million reported deaths in less than a year. Aside from the death toll, the pandemic has triggered significant emotional, physical, and economic problems all over the world. COVID-19 has instilled the feeling of insecurity, anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges. For many, these issues were a daily struggle even before COVID-19. And this pandemic has made the matter worse. But the question arises, how philosophy is related to it? The word philosophy implies love for wisdom. It challenges innate human curiosity. It is the study of nature of reality and existence. It is one of the most important fields of human thought as it explores the very meaning of life. Actually, philosophy compels us to find out the meaning of human existence itself, the reason of human being. When human is mortal, then worry about imminent death is futile. When everything is predestined, then why not enjoy a normal life without worrying about future? Various aspects of our societies are questioned when we suffer from a health crisis. In this context, philosophy helps us to take the necessary steps to move forward in a better way. When time represents the world in such a way that all our human relations, our feelings towards our fellow brothers, and even our own life seems to be endangered and questioned in every aspect of our being, that is the time when there is strong need to show the humanitarian approach towards our fellow being to keep the human relations alive. Life in 21st century, no matter how complex it is, may find solace in philosophy that might offer the most palpable and easy solutions to human problems, guiding towards the path of perpetual happiness and unending inner peace beyond the mad rat race and insecurity due to various reasons. Recent pandemic is one of them. This webinar seems offering a kind of amalgamation between Indian and Western philosophical doctrines. Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha, presently chairman of ICPR, and Professor Sir Richard Sorabji, honorary fellow, Wolfson College, Oxford, both are very renowned philosophers. I'm sure these deliberations will be highly informative and thought-provoking. I believe it would give food for thought to the participants. At last, I congratulate Director SOITS and other faculty of the school for organizing this webinar and wish it would motivate inquisitive minds to think about the basic questions of meaning of human existence. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your word of encouragement and insightful opening remarks. Now, I take this opportunity and with great honor, I invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to give his presidential address.
Good noon to all of you. Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha, Chairperson of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, Richard Sorabji, Honorary Fellow, Wolfson College, Oxford, my own colleagues in the university. I must compliment the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies for organizing this national webinar on the occasion of World Philosophy Day. And the theme which was chosen, it's quite relevant because when we are talking about the pandemics, then this philosophical perspectives of affiliation, that is to be seen distinctly. Today, fortunately, we are having two distinguished personalities with us. Both are the great names in the field of philosophy, not only in our country, but internationally also they are widely known. And both are today with us to enlighten us. Specifically, talking about the philosophical issues, that too in the context of pandemics. As has been rightly pointed out by our Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Sumitra Kukareti, that pandemics, it is a different sort of environment, wherein most of the things which we thought earlier, most of the philosophical basics which we considered earlier, now they all are to be changed. And that is the perspective which needs to be understood even at this point of time also. Pandemics is still there. People are trying to overcome it. But the word affiliation or the word oikoiosis, that carries a great meaning in these times of pandemics. Whenever any health issue comes, we normally talk that the people should be with you, nearer to you, close to you, may touch you, may put their hands on your forehead, try to rub your back, console you, putting their hands on the head. That is the need. And that was the philosophy which we are carrying on since long when we are looking at any sort of health issues to which we all are confronting. That philosophy tells us that we have to come from a distant place to reach to the person, closer to that person, and try to provide all sorts of calmness through our mental affiliation, physical affiliation. Now, this distinct philosophy is not being followed in case of these pandemics. We should not be with the patient. We should not be in the same room where the patient is there. We should not touch him. We should even provide the food from a distance. This is a different sort of affiliation, because the phrase, the word which oikosis, which was being used, it does not have any specific meaning, but it talks about the affinity and other things. Yes, I do agree. But this is a different sort of affinity which you all have to keep in mind. And a distinct philosophy is required. Different concepts are required. Basic premises they have to be changed. How to console, how to give mental strength to a person from distance. How this affiliation from a distance is going to inspire to and give the solace to the patients of this pandemic. And rightly chosen and rightly thought about it, that this requires a different perspective. From 2005, it was being decided that this World Philosophy Day, it will be celebrated in the third week of November, and that too on only Thursday. Today, of course, it is Wednesday, but it is the third week. So you see that a custom, a practice, a mindset, it gives us a basic premise to think over those basics which we are carrying on for the last so many years. Even for the health concerns also, the practice of affinity, it was being shown in a different way. But now we see that this pandemic has shown that we have to be at a distant place. Even in the hospitals also, we are being kept separate. So how this sort of affiliation is to be brought into this sort of structure? Still the people are talking about the variants. We don't know what sort of variants will come. Of course, the vaccination drive, it was very successful. We have crossed more than 100 crore people who are under the cover of this vaccination, and we are hoping for the best. Things are moving very fast. Government of India has taken a lot of pains for all these endeavors. Even during the pandemic also, it has stipulated to have the mental health issue. And for that, continuously we have to be in touch with all. How to inspire, how to motivate, how to inculcate a sense of mental strength. Because a lot of depression, it comes to a person who is affected by this pandemic. How to console, how to reach your own family members, even your doctors also, they will not be nearer to your place. And it is having a disastrous effect on the whole family also. And we see that lots of instances they have come up. We are two great philosophers who are with us. And they are the right people to say something on these issues. What I have said, it is my common sense. I don't know to what extent I have tried to see those issues. But the issue is to be addressed in the right perspective. And maybe they're food for thought, which they will give to us. We are in a much better position to understand. And maybe for future, we will have a much better philosophy of affiliation in the times of pandemic. Rightly chosen, the topic by Nandini ji. She is a great philosopher and working hard for this discipline for the last 10 years. And it's a very popular program in the university also. And giving us lots of learners from all corners of the country. I welcome both the distinguished speakers, Professor Sinha ji and Professor Sorabji, who were kind enough to enlighten all of us on this auspicious day. We are eager more to listen to them. So, thank you very much. Thank you. And I welcome both of them once again for sharing their valuable time for us. And we will listen to every word which they will share with all of us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable and respected Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Nageshwar Rao ji, for your extremely inspiring, encouraging presidential address. Thank you, sir, for your words of support and insightful observations. Thank you very much, sir. Now, before I invite the chief guest, Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji, to deliver his speech, let me introduce him very briefly. Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji, currently Chairperson of Indian Council of Philosophical Research, has been a professor and head of the Department of Philosophy at Patna University. He obtained his PhD from Banaras Hindu University. He has been awarded Senior Fellowship by Indian Council of Philosophical Research to work on the project Religious Identity and the Concept of the Other. In about 40 years of his teaching and research career, he has written 3 books and edited 5 books. He has contributed more than 100 articles to national and international journals. He is the chief editor of Darshanik Traimasik, a quarterly journal of the Akhil Bharatiya Darshan Parishad, and he is also the chief editor of Philosophical Quest. That is Simant Naitikta, that is his latest contribution in the field of applied philosophy. He has received J.P. Loknayak Samman from the Vice President of India, Vidya Bhushan Award from Vidwat Parishad, Varanasi, for his consistent and continued contribution to academic activities. A felicitation volume entitled Dimensions of Applied Philosophy has been published by Akhil Bharatiya Darshan Parishad to honor his contribution in the world of philosophy. He has visited United States of America, United Kingdom, Canada, South Korea, Athens, Iran, for participating in international seminars and conferences. With that, I complete a brief introduction of Professor Sinha ji. Now I invite Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji to give his chief guest speech. His topic is Compassion and Pandemic. Professor Sinha.
First of all, I must offer my namaskar to each and every one on the screen and off the screen. It is a great honor for me to be with you, and especially after hearing the learned speech of the Vice Chancellor. So, Honorable Vice Chancellor, the Pro-Vice Chancellor, and Nandini ji, I may not be in a position to spell out each and every name, but the co-panelist, Richard, Sorabji, and very many friends, and to whom I know, Jayanti ji, and some more persons. So I offer my namaskar. Now I come to the theme. Why I suggested pandemic and compassion. Philosophizing is certainly conceptualizing. So, what is the concept of pandemic, and how pandemic and compassion are very much a relevant topic for a philosopher. I thought over this problem, and certainly the life of the entire globe, the global existence is under crisis. People are shut within the four walls. We suffer a lot and suffering a lot. So naturally, I will talk about the post-pandemic society which is emerging. The post-pandemic society, I call it the normal society, the new normal society. The normalcy cannot be obtained because the life has been shattered. The entire world has suffered a lot, economically, psychologically, and ethically too. So in the new normal society which we are heading to, a philosophical concept is required to be developed. So naturally, I will talk about the new normal, the concept of the new normal. And in the beginning, I uttered that philosophizing is conceptualizing. So I will conceptualize the society which is going to be called as the new normal. So there are three components, because any concept, philosophical concept, we have read about the new normal in the paper, and we have heard about it, but philosophical concept, systematic concept has not been developed. And here in the August presence of some of the philosophers and in this interdisciplinary gathering, I would like to contemplate that the new normal concept will consist of three components. One is the survival. In this Corona period and the post-Corona period is very important, because the survival, man must survive. और मैंने पहले भी कहा है कि यदि हम जिंदा रहेंगे तो मंदिरों में घंटियां बजेगी. विदिन कोट, यदि हम जिंदा रहेंगे तो मंदिरों में घंटियां बजेंगी, मस्जिदों में अजान हम दे सकते हैं और चर्च में हम प्रार्थना कर सकते हैं. So survival is a very important one. This post pandemic world, or to say the new normal society. Moreover, the social distancing is also very important, but not social stigma. As ordinarily, social distancing is good for the society in this pandemic age, but social stigma is very bad. And we in so many cases, we find that social distancing has been converted into social stigma. Some of the one story I can narrate in brief, that a father traveling from Chandigarh to Samastipur, very near to Patna, and the daughter, he knocked the door of the daughter, and the daughter could not open. She had small children, that my father might be carrying the this infection of the corona. So that has turned to be stigma. So my contention is that social distancing is a must in this pandemic age, but social stigma should not be developed. So this is the third component is very important. That is a compassion. In this new normal society, compassion is very important, and compassion comprises two components. One is the empathy, and the other is the sympathy. Empathy and sympathy both are interconnected. Sympathy is feeling towards others. Why I talk about this compassion? Because during Corona period, we have seen that laborers who were unemployed and who were returning from the different parts of the country, how much they suffered when they wanted to enter into their villages. The doors were closed. So that was a pathetic scene and situation. So naturally, sympathy towards others, compassion is very essential in this the new normal society. So, but the compassion needs social service. Compassion needs feeling towards others. This sympathy is feeling towards others, but this feeling towards others cannot be developed without empathy. Empathy is just feeling into. And I must refer here Buddhism. In Buddhism, in early Buddhism, in Hinayan, Appadipo Bhava is a celebrated saying. And in Shankaracharya's Advaita Vedanta, we find he has written a very good book, Atma Bodh. And this Atma Bodh, the very term Atma Bodh says a lot. Without Atma Bodh, without inner realization, you cannot serve others. You cannot have sympathy towards others unless you have got this inner realization or Atma Bodh. Without Atma Bodh, we cannot think about serving others. So this is the nuance of the Indian culture. This is the thinking of the Indian culture. Indian saints and seers, they conceived that one should have self-realization, self-purification, and self-enlightenment, bodhisattva in the Buddhist terminology. And without having this Atma Bodh, one cannot serve others, because a selfish man, an impure man, the man who is mentally and physically not prone to service to others, not prone to serve others, So my conclusion is that we have to follow the Indian culture, Indian, and especially the Advaitic philosophy, which helps us to be enlightened and to serve. Indian philosophy suggests us to serve others. So with these words, this compassion becomes very important in this pandemic situation. Thank you very much. Thank you, organizers, and especially Nandini ji, who contacted me. And I'm sorry that I was late for 3-4 minutes. With these words, I congratulate you and I offer my namaskar to the Honorable Vice Chancellor who had been kind enough to listen the deliberation in few words, because I was not very much prepared to say tomorrow. For tomorrow I was. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji, for a very enlightening and inspiring chief guest speech, sir. You very aptly said that compassion and pandemic were very much relevant a topic today for a philosopher, and you spoke on the emergence of post-pandemic society, the new normal society, the nature of it, and you dwelt upon the three basic concepts which are going to characterize the nature of the post-pandemic new normal society, namely survival, the concept of survival, social distancing and compassion. In turn, both the concepts of empathy and sympathy, the interconnectedness, and we should have first self-consciousness, Atmabodh, to serve others. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for a very enlightening speech. Now, before I invite Professor Sir Richard Sorabji, let me introduce him very briefly. He has illustrious biodata. Sir Richard Rustam Khurshedji Sorabji, CBE, FBA, is a British historian of ancient Western philosophy and Professor of Philosophy Emeritus at King's College, London. And rightly, he is fellow with Wolfson College at Oxford. He has written his intellectual autobiography in his first script, Ars Salis edited, Metaphysics, Soul, and Ethics in Ancient Thought. He was born in Oxford with roots in India. He went to school, Dragon School and Charterhouse, and after 2 years of national service, he attended Pembroke College, Oxford, on the Bolter and Radcliffe Scholarship. He took degrees in Greek and Latin literature, also in literary humaniores. Sir Sorabji subsequently spent some time teaching at his old school before completing a BPhil at Oxford under Professor Gwel Owen and Professor John Acrill. Sir Sorabji's first academic post was at Cornell University in United States of America, where he became associate professor while working also as an editor of the Philosophical Review. In 1970, he returned to England and joined the faculty of King's College, London, where he was appointed professor of ancient philosophy in 1981. His main interest has been Aristotle, on whom he published his first books, Aristotle on Memory, and 4 volumes of articles on Aristotle from 1975 to 79. Sir Sorabji was the president of the Aristotelian Society from 85 to 86 and founded the International Ancient Commentators on Aristotle project. And this project has successfully published 100 volumes up to the end of 2012. It is interesting that Sir Sorabji has written essays and a book on Mahatma Gandhi. He compares Mahatma Gandhi to Stoic philosophy so that both the Gandhian philosophy of life and Stoicism are illuminated. He became a fellow of the British Academy in 1989. He founded the King's College Center for Philosophical Studies between 89 and 91 with the aim of promoting philosophy to the wider public. He was the director of the Institute of Classical Studies from 91 to 96 and British Academy Research Professor at Oxford from 96 to 99. He gave Gifford Lectures in 1996 and 97 which were later published as Emotion and Peace of Mind, From Stoic Agitation to Christian Temptation. He was an honorary member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Sorabji retired from King's College in 2000 and subsequently held teaching positions as Professor of Rhetoric at Gresham College, London, Adjunct Professor at the University of Texas at Austin, Distinguished Visiting Scholar at New York University. Sir Sorabji was appointed Commander of the Order of British Empire in 1999 for his services to ancient philosophy and received the knighthood in 2014 birthday honors for services to philosophical scholarship. To his credit, he has 20 published books, 73 articles, and 2 poems. So now I invite Professor Sir Richard Sorabji to deliver the keynote speech for today, The Value in the Time of Pandemic Illness of Ancient Stoic Theory of Human Affiliation. Sir, Professor Richard Sorabji, please deliver your speech. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your introduction, Dr. Nandini Sinha. Let me start by mentioning, and it's already been mentioned, the COVID pandemic that we are facing in our countries, and the positive side of this pandemic, that it has caused a great deal of fellow feeling, and, as you said, madam, of compassion. The ancient Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca, in the first years of our era, the first years CE, said that every illness includes the fear of death. I think this used to be true, and we are fortunate to live in the time of antibiotics, which has made it less true than it was before. This is something very recent. I remember antibiotics coming in, the first few examples of antibiotics, as recently as the 1940s. I'm going to talk about an ancient Greek philosophical theory, the theory of oikoiosis. That word has two parts to it in Greek, ancient Greek. Oikaios means belonging to each other. There's an idea that human beings belong together, and the ending, cis, denotes a process. So there is a process, according to the ancient Greeks, of coming to spread the sense of belonging with other human beings. Oikoiosis, then, is this process of feeling the sense of belonging to wider and wider circles of people. The word oikaios, which means belonging, one's own, and so on, is connected with the ancient Greek word for a house. A house is an oikos in ancient Greek, because this is a place where people who belong particularly closely gather together. Now, oikoiosis can be extended initially to one's own body. That's perhaps the first thing that a child feels attached to. At least this is what the ancient Greek theory says. But it spreads out to the immediate family, and it should be spread further and further, according to the Greek theory. It should be spread, ideally, to the whole of mankind. And there are techniques also for spreading out the sense of belonging to other people beyond one's family, for example, by using modes of address. And this is something that's quite independently appreciated in India. One can speak of people by naming them with a closer relation than what they actually, strictly speaking, have to you. One can call people brothers, when in fact they may not be related at all except as human beings. There are other modes of address one can use. I think in India, it does happen that people who are only cousins, more remotely connected with you, may be called brothers, because it increases the sense of belonging with each other. I'll quote a passage from an ancient Greek philosopher, whose name was Hierocles, as to how one should behave towards people connected with you. He speaks as follows. It goes along with what has been said concerning behavior towards parents and brothers and wife and children, to add also a discussion of relatives, which feels more or less like those others, and for this very reason can be expounded concisely. For in general, each of us is circumscribed as though by many circles, some smaller, some larger, some surrounding others, some surrounded, according to their different and unequal relations to one another. The first and nearest circle is that which each of us has drawn around his mind as center point. In this circle is included the body and what is employed for the sake of the body. People are attached to their own bodies, he's saying. For this circle is the shortest and all but touches the center point itself. Second from this, and standing further away from the center point, while surrounding the first circle, is that in which are arranged parents, siblings, wife and children. The third circle from these is that in which are uncles and aunts, grandfathers and grandmothers, the children of siblings and also cousins. Next upon this circle is that of the members of one's demos, an area of all the city in which one lives in ancient Greece. Then that of the members of one's tribe, next that of one's fellow citizens, and so finally that of those neighbouring the city, and that of people of the same race. But the further out and larger circle surrounding all the circles is the circle of the whole human race. Once these have been thought out accordingly, it is possible, starting with the circles stretched furthest out, to pull the circles, as it were, inwards, as if to the centre, in respect of the treatment due to members, and with an effort always to transfer members from surrounding circles into surrounded ones. For example, according to one's love of family affiliation, it is possible to treat parents and siblings, here there's a gap in the text, and therefore in the same proportion as for relatives, to treat older men and women as grandparents, uncles or aunts, those of the same age as cousins, and those younger as the children of cousins. Thus a clear recommendation has been formulated. It's called recommendation. It's not said that this happens in every case without effort. It's a recommendation in concise terms as to how one should behave towards relatives, since we had already given instruction on how we should treat ourselves, how children and siblings, and again how wife and children. It has been added that one must honour in a way similar to these latter those from the third circle, and must honour relatives in turn similarly to these last. For although the greater distance in blood will subtract something from goodwill, we must nonetheless make an effort about assimilation. But it would arrive at due moderation if, through our own initiative, we cut down the distance in our relationship towards each person. one more paragraph from my quotation. This is an ancient Greek quotation about what they call in Greek oikaiosis, treating other people as belonging, as process. The all-embracing and most practical point has been made, but to the measure we must add usage in regard to modes of address by calling cousins uncles and aunts brothers, fathers and mothers. And among further relatives, calling some uncle, others nephews and still others cousins, in whatever way their ages may run, for the sake of the attachment in the names. For this kind of address would be no slight sign of the care we feel for each, and at the same time would excite and intensify the indicated drawing together of circles. Well, I've encountered this sort of practice, which the ancient Stoics are recommending. I've encountered it in India, where I have come across the practice of calling cousins brothers. And in England, people sometimes use of kindly older ladies, they call them auntie, even if they're not related at all. This is a rather good practice of naming people by names closer than their actual ones, by way of drawing people closer together. I so far been talking about the ancient Greeks, but the same is true of the ancient Romans who came later. And I'll quote a passage from the ancient Roman statesman and philosopher Cicero, talking about the Stoics, the Stoic philosophers. The Stoic philosophers think it important to be understood that it is arranged by nature that children are loved by their parents. And it is as something following on this beginning that we trace the common sociability of the human race. This should be understood first from the configuration and the members of our bodies, which themselves make clear that the scheme for procreation is a possession we derive from nature. But it would not be consistent for nature to wish for procreation and not make provision for the offspring to be loved. Indeed, even in animals, the force of nature can be seen. When we see the labor involved in their gestation and upbringing, we seem to hear the voice of nature itself. So as it is clearly by nature that we shrink from pain, so it is apparent that we are impelled by nature itself to love those whom we have procreated. From this is born the result that the communal affiliation of humans, affiliation is the central word here, of humans with humans should be natural, and that one human, from the very fact of being human, should be seen by another human as not alien. That is the Roman thinker, Cicero speaking, and he's not merely describing what happens, he's prescribing. He's saying this is what ought to happen. He uses the term should, and many other words cognate with that. There's another philosopher, a Greek philosopher, Heracles, who does much the same. He speaks of the treatment due to people and of a recommendation of how one should behave to relatives. Again and again, using terms that mean should or must, or it is fitting, and so on. Cicero, the Roman thinker, whom I mentioned just a moment ago, applies the idea of extending belonging, in Greek oikaiosis. The process of extending belonging, he applies it to animals and points out that animals feel attachment first to their own bodies, but then to their families, and spread out the sense of affiliation wider and wider, starting from their own bodies, affiliation to their own bodies. This is so far presented by the ancient Greeks and Romans as something that happens naturally. But it's also useful, I think, to legislators to think in these terms. We're perhaps particularly sensitive to that in a time of pandemic. I'm thinking of the current COVID pandemic, the importance of fellow feeling. And it is useful to legislation, I think, to think about this ancient theory, Greek and then Roman, of oikoiosis, that is, of the process of extending the feeling of belonging wider and wider to other people. Now, I think I've taken much less than my allowed 25 minutes, and I hope I haven't been too brief in explaining the ancient theory of oikoiosis in Greek, affiliation to other human beings in time of pandemic. I will gladly elaborate what I've said in the question period, but that provides a summary of this ancient theory of oikoiosis, which I think is useful to us now to think about, and to think about how we should practice, because the difficulty is not with the closest relationships, where we naturally extend a feeling of belonging to those closest to us, but it's the ancient Greek and Roman idea that we should extend eventually this feeling of belonging to the whole of mankind that is more difficult. But it's a very interesting and valuable suggestion, I think, from ancient Greek and Roman philosophy. Let me pause there and see whether you would like me to explain further or comment on what I've told you so far.
Sure, sir. Go ahead.
We've got one question here, yes?
Please unmute yourself. Mr. Chintan, please unmute yourself.
Sir, my name is Chintan. I'm from Mumbai. I really enjoyed your presentation. I wanted to ask you whether the Greeks extended the sense of belonging to their slaves as well.
Extended the sense of belonging to
slaves.
Oh, to slaves.
That's an interesting thing.
That's a very good critique.
Yes.
That is a very good critique. And it is a justified criticism, I think, that the institution of slavery hardly fits with this recommendation of a sense of belonging.
Yes.
Of course, it is true that a lot of Greeks and Romans did treat their slaves well, but they weren't obliged to. Slaves were their property. Your table, your dining table, is your property. If you were stupid enough to smash up your dining table, well, that's your business. And unfortunately, when other people are regarded as property, the same applies to them. If you starve your slaves, well, you're rather foolishly destroying your own property. There's nothing saying that slaves are excluded from this. And the theory doesn't comment on how you should treat slaves. The theory implies that this sense of belonging should be extended to humanity quite generally and without any qualification. But of course, it's very much harder to extend it to slaves if you're living in a society where slaves are regarded as property which you can damage if you choose, if you're annoyed or something. It makes it very hard to extend it properly. But officially, slaves are not excluded from this sense that all humans belong together.
Thank you, sir, for responding to my question.
Thank you. Any other question from the participants?
Well, perhaps I can learn something from you in lesson until there's another question. I'd much better to hear questions, but I have a question to put to you if we're not getting another question, but I think we have got a question.
Yes, sir.
Have we?
Jeremiah Dumai has raised a hand. Do you have any question, Jeremiah? Yes, Jeremiah. He has left the meeting after raising his hand, or
No, my mistake maybe. Can I ask one question to sir?
yes, sir.
Thank
yes,
you.
Dr. Sahu, go
Thank
ahead.
Sir, actually, this belongingness is, I think, in every culture. If we see, in India also we call Vasundhavam Kutumbakam. In Africa, they called Ubuntu. And I think every culture has some concept of belongingness, and that is what very important for them. But if we see today society, people are more in competition and conflict. So this concept is not even guiding them. But it is becoming just like ritual. So what is the crisis? Why it is happening?
Would you tell me the the Indian name for this sense of belonging, or the process of extending sense of belonging?
No,
Sir, it is.
Huh.
Sir, it is
Sorry?
Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, it is in Hindi. It means that Sari Prithvi, the whole universe is like your family.
What's the relation, between the whole universe and one's family? Just say again, would you please?
No, we consider entire universe is our family.
The universe is one's family.
Hmm.
I see. That seems an even more difficult thought to achieve. It sounds very admirable, but that includes the physical universe, does it?
Yes.
It includes the stars and so on?
Yes, sir. Yes. In fact, in spiritual...
No, it is. I'm sorry for the disruption. It is not the physical. It is the human beings. The whole world is your family in terms of human relations.
I see. So that makes it closer to the Greek. We're not talking about.
Yes.
We're not talking about the inanimate universe. We're talking about other human beings. Are we including animals in this theory?
Sir, in this theory, only human society.
Yes.
Only humans.
All of humans.
But there are
I
spiritual
see.
traditions which goes beyond human.
Was the name Kundakom? I'm not sure that I got it down correctly.
Vasundevam Kutumbakam.
Right.
Vasundeva is universe, sir. Kutumbakam is family.
Your kinsmen, kinswomen. Kutumbakam.
Did you say did you say the word literally means famine? Did I hear that rightly?
No, family.
Family. Thank you very much. It means family. I see. And how is this concept used? Is it used in very much the same way that this is something which would be natural and is desirable to extend this feeling to everybody? Do you have that same idea in the Indian concept as you have in the ancient Greek and Roman Stoic concept?
Sir, the way you explained it applies to this similar concept. Like I told Ubuntu in Africa and Vasundevam Kutumbakam in India. But my question is why the crisis today, they are ritualistic. In fact, every society they have their own concept of belongingness. But if we see the society today, it is more crisis in terms of competition, conflict everywhere.
I wonder what is new today. One thing that's new today is that we are in touch with societies all over the whole world, so we may be more conscious of how other societies behave. But I wonder whether the difficulty of spreading the sense of belonging to with other humans who are different from oneself and modern ones.
Dr. Sahu would like to answer that question.
Yes, I think Sir has touched to some extent, but
Yes.
My question to Sir was why this crisis is happening today. And I think we should take other question also. Professor Subhangi has one question.
When you say why this crisis is happening today, I also look at quite encouraging things that after 2 world wars in the 20th century, we've now had, am I right, 75 years, is it? Without world wars. Of course, there have been more localized wars, I'm sorry to say. But at least we have avoided a repetition of the 2 world wars that we had in the 20th century. That is a small that is a small relief for us to think about, because it's not that we don't have the means for starting up world wars, but there has been somewhat more restraint. Do you think we can take any encouragement from that?
Yes, I agree, sir. But still, wars are everywhere.
Would you say that again, please? The last little bit.
Sir, the wars are happening everywhere between communities.
Wars are happening everywhere. Yes, more localized wars are happening everywhere.
Think
it's true.
More countries are
that
in
hasn't
war
changed
now.
at all.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Vaidya's question is, Dr. Shubhangi Vaidya is asking, addressing both the eminent speakers, how is healing and closure to be achieved after losing so many in the pandemic? Sir, would you like to take up this question?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Healing and closure. I don't know. I don't know whether closure can ever be fully achieved, and I'm not sure whether it would be right that it should be fully achieved. So many people have lost people that belong to them, that belong closely within their families. Closure, there's a form of closure, but a form of closure which doesn't deny or forget the loss. In that sense, I think that closure can be achieved, and it's a better thing that it should be achieved. But closure should not forget or deny the loss that's happened. It's a closure which comes to live with the loss without denying it or forgetting it. That sort of closure, difficult to achieve, I think is desirable to achieve gradually.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Jeremiah Dumai, do you have a question? You had raised your hand earlier, but then you had left.
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry for the mistake that happened. I am just wondering whether the idea that you mentioned about, which is that we are a relationship, everybody is related to everybody in certain way or the other. So was this idea a very subversive idea at that point of time when these ancient writers came up with this idea?
I think it was very startling. It wasn't the normal way of thinking. Greeks were very conscious of being Greek, and they called non-Greeks barbarians. The Greek was barbaros, or in the plural, barbaroi, from which our word barbarians come. It is true, of course, that the Greeks had suffered invasion from the Persians. They had people had different nations had reasons to fear each other, as they do nowadays in some cases. So it took an effort. It took an effort to think of people as belonging together. But yes, your question was this sense of belonging there in antiquity? Was that your question? I'm sorry. Would you just repeat the question, please?
I was asking that particular question because I, in one way, think that it is quite easy to say that we're all related. At the level of ideas, it seems to be easy, though practically it is very difficult to leave it out. So, was it very subversive? Was it a very subversive idea? And was there any group of philosopher or any thinker who was opposed to this kind of idea among the Greeks?
That's a very interesting question. Yes, let me think. No, strangely enough, it's a very interesting question because I hadn't thought about that before. No, there was no rival theory among philosophers saying, oh, it's not true that we are all related, that we are all oikaioi in the ancient Greek word, and that we should practice the process of oikaiosis, of feeling belonging with each other. There wasn't a rival theory that this is the wrong view. It's just that, of course, regrettably, it didn't come about because people still had their enemies and so on. there was a long tradition of Greek fear of the Persians who had invaded them at one time. But no, there wasn't a rival theory that, no, we're better off making sure that we're the strongest so that we can subdue each other and don't have to engage in this spreading out of belonging. It's a very good question. I hadn't thought about it before, but no, I don't think a rival theory was produced.
All right, thank you, sir. There is a question from Nikhil Gaur. Why don't humans embrace existentialism?
Why don't humans sorry?
Why don't humans embrace existentialism?
Now, I'm going to have to confess that I've not studied existentialism closely enough to be quite sure what it stands for and how it would be helpful. Would you just say a few words to me and to us? How existentialism would help? What is it about existentialism that would be contribute to a sense of belonging, or how would it relate to a sense of belonging?
Yes, Nikhil, what do you have in mind? Professor Sorabji is asking.
Yeah. Hi there, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Nikhil. I have a question that why don't we embrace existentialism? I mean, I have seen a lot of people that they are so sad about that they're just, I mean, why did they born? And I mean, they're in so much of depression that they were born. I mean, they had a dark time with life. So I'm just curious to know about the Greek philosophy about existentialism.
Now, I've got to confess that I came across existentialism in my younger years, but it's so long since I've thought about it that I need reminding what existentialism tells us. Would you just give me a little reminder?
See, the term that I had read about existentialism, I have read some quotes about Albert Camus.
Yes.
You have heard that name, Albert Camus.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yeah. He had embraced this term existentialism a long time ago, and he had just, his philosophy is upon just the happiness in life. So I'm just curious to know about the Greek philosophy of existentialism.
So may I intervene? May
yes, Professor Sinha, please go ahead.
Actually, he has mentioned about Albert Camus.
Yeah.
He thinks that life is full of absurdities. Yeah. Life is a tale told by an idiot. That concept is prevailing in existential thought. Actually, I can how the existentialism emerged. That in reaction to the Cartesian philosophy, that I think, therefore I exist. So existence was derived from thought. So in protest, rather in Jean-Paul Sartre and some of the existentialists, they thought that existence cannot be derived from thinking. So let us have to say that essayist perceive existence precedes the essence, because essence is an abstract thing. How how the existence can be derived from an abstract thought. So it is just a discipline protesting the rationalism. And in existentialism, there are two sorts of existentialists. One is theist, having faith in God, and some of existentialists are atheist. So naturally, atheists like Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, they do not, they think that life is an absurd. Every day we start with the same toothbrush, we press the same bed, and we just go on living. And in the end, the life becomes useless passion. So that is the contention of Jean-Paul Sartre, the great existentialist. So in this pandemic age, what I do not know what the questioner has in his mind, but I think in this pandemic age, in this pandemic situation, very many people have gone under depression. But those, especially those who belong to Indian culture, they have got faith in humanity as well as faith in God. So this faith rather prevented the Indian people or the Indian culture to undergo under depression. I do not know about the other countries, though I visited long back. But in this pandemic age, depression is a very dangerous thing. It works in a subtle way. So why not we accept existentialism? Means we should accept that life is an absurd and we have to go on living, just go on living. There is no aim and there is no purpose, the purposeless life. And so we have to just live. That is the spirit of existentialism.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is that okay, Nikhil? Thank you so much, absolutely. Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji. Should we now come to an end of this? Is there one more question? Any important question?
Hello? Yes, ma'am, I have a question.
Hello? Okay, that is the last question we are going to take for this session. Here is Krishnamurti ji who wants to ask a question. Your question is addressed to whom?
Addressed to Sri R.C. Sinha ji.
Okay, Professor Sinha ji.
I am Dr. Srinivasan, an independent academician. Sir, you were briefing about compassion, sympathy, empathy, and sympathy. They are there already. What is the new normal in that? Patanjali has quoted in his sutra, Patanjali Yoga Sutra, chapter 133, 33rd sloka, Maitri Karuna Mudito Upeksanam. That means fraternity, compassion, equanimity, and all those things have already been emphasized in all these scriptural values. And does it mean that we are not applying our mind and carrying out all the scriptures about speaking about new normal now? Your opinion, sir.
No, I attempted to relate Buddhism and Hinduism and work out how the values contemplated in Indian culture. And Indian culture belongs both to theist and atheist, belonging both to heterodox and orthodox systems. So in Buddhism, you are rightly, very rightly said that this Brahma Vihar and these values, compassion is a value. And without having compassion in this pandemic age, we cannot go on living. The sense of belonging or the sense of compassion, both cannot be equated. The sense of belonging is certainly very much earthly one, and compassion is certainly a spiritual one. But the intention behind both the expression sense of belonging or having the compassion, I think this is the noble value stipulated by Lord Buddha, as well as in Hinduism too. We have got this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is also very noble thought. And in this pandemic age, certainly we need such values, because life cannot go without values, and values like compassion. That was my attempt to relate Buddhistic conception of compassion to this new normal society, because in the new normal society we need compassion and sympathy much more than in we need very much in this distress time. That's I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, sir. Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji, for taking up the interesting questions. Thank you, Professor Sinha. I take this opportunity to thank Professor Sir Richard Sorabji for an extremely illuminating discourse on the concept of human affiliation, especially during the crisis period of pandemic. With reference to the ancient Greek philosophy, the Stoics encourage each of us to pull the circles of others closer towards ourselves at the center and provide techniques for doing so. This has been one of the highlights of his speech. And Oekai Sois will also help social legislations. During a pandemic, there is a more need than usual for affiliation. Others may, for example, require food, services, or teaching delivered at home, and we have seen that happening all over the world. Thank you, sir. Thank you, both our distinguished speakers. Thank you very much, Professor Ramesh Chandra Sinha ji, and thank you very much, Richard Sorabji, Professor Sir Sorabji. Thank you. Now I request my colleague, Dr. Sadanand Sahu, to render the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Professor Nandini. And I think this is a very thoughtful, reflective seminar where we actually reflect upon ourselves, our time, and there is nothing better than having two world-class, renowned philosophers like Professor Sorabji and Professor Ramchandra Sinha. Both have done extensive work in this area. So more than that, both of them also very kindly agreed to invite questions and interact with all the participants. I thank you, sir, for giving your valuable time and interacting with all of us so kindly. Thank you for that. I also thank Professor, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nageshwar Rao, and for his guidance, all support. I thank our PVC Professor Sumitra Kukreti, who has been always supporting our school, guiding us, and at every step she has been encouraging. I thank our director, Professor Sachi Shah, for bringing this entire, background work, whatever, she supported, and today we could see a very fruitful seminar. I thank Professor Nandini Sinha Kapoor, who has been behind the scene, very humbly working and making everything, inviting speakers and all the, entire program schedule and all the things today is very fruitful. She is behind the scene. I thank all our faculty members, Professor Daina Rupini, Professor Subhangi Vaidya, Dr. Human, Dr. Diksha Rabe, Dr. Venkat Ramanan, Dr. Susmita, and all our staffs and all our IGNOU staffs and everybody behind the scene and in the front. And I also thank Rajesh Sharmaji, who has been actually making this event available to the public through Facebook and other social media. I thank all our staff members, alumni, and IGNOU fraternity for supporting us in this seminar. I thank you all once again for having a very fruitful seminar and supporting and encouraging us. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Sahu, for the vote of thanks. I would like to make a special mention of Dr. Ashutosh Vyas, who has helped a lot in making the poster and other related organizational work. Thank you. Thank you all the respected audience and participants. Thank you so much.
And making this event, keep the behind the scene after Professor Gandhi. Thank you.